Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Miranda, and today I'm going to be discussing the books that I have read this year so far. I did a video a little bit ago about how ridiculously out of sorts my TBR pile is. It's just so many books, and one of my goals this year was to really, and I've said this before, but I'm trying to stick to it more this year, was really to try and get through more of the books on my TBR just to see if I like them, obviously, because they've been there for so long, a lot of them, and then also hopefully like if I didn't like them to be able to get rid of them, give them away, so then I can clear and make some more space for new books because I'm running out of space. Like they're falling everywhere and it's getting quite concerning that one day I'm just going to be trying to reach for something, the books are going to fall on me and someone's going to find me in an avalanche of books with just like my one sock sticking out, you know, and they'll just tell the tale of the girl who was absolutely decimated by books falling on her. And I think it's good because it also challenges me to read more books. I've been really struggling, I think, with reading slumps lately and just not being as able to read as much as I used to when I was like really at my peak. So rather than like waiting till last year where it was like the last possible day and I was desperately trying to make my reading goal, I decided to set a bit more of a reasonable expectation for myself, and that is to try and read 2 books a month. Sometimes I can go above it, sometimes I can go below it, but I feel like it overall makes it so I'll try and read 24 books this year, but instead of looking at it as like a whole scope of the whole year and trying to hit that goal, instead it's just month to month trying to make 2 books, which I have successfully for the most part. Like I said, I think it's good because you can go over or under kind of very easily, so it makes it so like if there was a month where I read more books than 2, it kind of could make up for it if there's one later on where I'm not reading as much or just not having as much time or energy or stuff like that. But yeah, I wanted to look at the books that I have read this year so far because there have been some really amazing ones, and like I said, I've been really getting through some of my TBR that I've been looking at for a while or that have been there for a while, kicking them out of their home. They're probably like, there's literally like a shelf dust stain from how long they've been there. So I'm excited to share them and tell you what I thought about them. Yeah, let's check it out. So the first book I read this year was Suddenly a Murder, talking about all the TBR stuff. Coincidentally enough, this is actually a book that I borrowed from the library. I hadn't heard of it at all, but my library, I don't know if it's just like the times or whatever, but definitely like in terms of like 2014, I feel like when every book you picked up was kind of like dystopian love triangle. Now my library, and I feel like again this is reflective of like what a lot of the books published is, but it's just so many like crime mysteries, like killer things like that. So what I kind of do, since like I don't know a lot of them, is I just go on like what looks interesting. The cover, I read the synopsis, and this one sounded really interesting because it was like the 5 main suspects was like the description, so it was like, was it this person? Was it this person? And I just felt like that kind of felt more like watching a movie in terms of like a kind of whodunit like that, instead of like where you get a book and it's like specifically from one person's point of view and you're like, oh, like did they do it or something like that. So I was really intrigued by the premise, which is why it's going to be weird to say that when you read the book you're going to be very confused, as was I, because when you first start it, and for a good majority of it, it's only actually from one person's point of view, the main girl. The flashbacks are the other people's point of view to like things that happened previously that could contribute to why this person was murdered. It didn't have that aspect of me of like switching perspectives and being like, oh, one person is going to be the murderer and like we have to try and figure it out, because for the majority of it, and this isn't a spoiler, I feel like this is how the blurb should have been written, the main character, the point of view you're reading from, she thinks that she killed him, which is like hard to wrap your head around because one, you have the blurb of like, oh, like it said that we have 5 suspects. Why is this girl like so certain that she's the one that killed him? And then also like she just talks about it in terms of like, I killed him, and you're like, okay, but how? You know, like there's like never really any specifics. It was still a really good book. It was a locked room kind of mystery. Like they're all on an island, so like yeah, they leave the room, but like there's a storm coming in, they're stuck on the island. Like it was a lot of like mystery kind of Agatha Christie vibes that I liked. I think had it just not been described as like having like these different characters that you would have got equal time with, I wouldn't have been expecting that, so then that wouldn't have been that confusion in the beginning. But it was a really, really good book. The ending actually made me cry, which I didn't think was going to happen, but it's this confrontation at the end that like just had me sobbing. There's a really fun character because it's like a detective investigating what happened, and it's very clearly like the detective that you would normally get like as the main character, like a Benoit Blanc or Hercule Poirot. How do you say his name? I don't know how you say his name, but from Agatha Christie. So it's kind of fun like seeing that kind of character that would normally take up so much space as like a side character, and how like people who are in the mystery as the suspects react to that kind of person. So I think it was really fun, and like I said, I feel like I haven't read too many of the like crime books, mystery books like this, that they're starting to feel repetitive. I definitely think that could happen, but as of now, this felt different. This felt cool. I'm always a fan, like I said, of kind of that like locked mystery of like you can't move, so everything kind of took place in the weekend. They're stuck on the island, and I think it just upped the stakes, and the characters were interesting. There was a love interest that was kind of strange. Like, I really feel like it didn't need to be there, even though my favorite quote is one of the love interest lines, but I feel like it just kind of added some unnecessariness to it. So I really, really liked it. If you're like a fan of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder or One of Us is Lying, those kind of like teenage whodunits, I think this is a really good one, and it stands out on its own for the like differences, like I said, and I enjoyed it. Next up, I read a book that literally has been on my shelf since it probably came out, because I remember like really wanting to read it and then buying it when it came out in like probably 2021 at this point. Yeah, June 2021. And that is For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. I have been wanting to read this one like since it came out. I'm not a huge fantasy person, so the fact that like I saw this and like actually went out and bought it when it came out shows you how excited I was for it. It is a duology, so I'm kind of disappointed I don't have the second book, because I don't think I loved it enough to buy the second book, and I can't find the second book at any of my libraries. So like, even though I want to finish the series, it's going to be a little bit before I do, just because I'm waiting to see if I can find a library with it. So this is basically about a society fantasy world where the second daughter of every like generation is sacrificed to the wolf in the woods. So the woods are like this very like rotting, kind of all-consuming thing that's being held back by this barrier that they assume is powered by the sacrifice of the second daughter. So the point of view is from both, which I did not expect this, it is from both Red's point of view, who is the second daughter that is getting sacrificed, and her sister, who is the firstborn, and they're actually twins. So it's really like messed up, because for them it's kind of this dynamic, not for Red really, but for her sister it's kind of this like 2 seconds is what changed our fates. You know, like she could be the one that was being sacrificed if she had been born first. It was just like luck of the draw. So I didn't expect for her sister to have as much of a time in it, and I feel like she is a very interesting character, which is why like I'm excited to read her book. But in that being said, I do feel like a lot of her chapters dealt with like the villains and like very clearly getting manipulated, so it could be a bit frustrating. Red, I feel like the world created with the Wildwood was very interesting in how like stuff worked and the description and the imagery. Unfortunately, before I read this, my friend did clue me into the fact that apparently the love interest is based on Kylo Ren. So that kind of, I feel like, ruined it, because like I don't have a big, like, there's some interesting books where Kylo Ren is based on the love interest, but I just feel like with this one, it was very clearly like, he's so brooding and mysterious, and it just kind of felt like, it is like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so you've got to picture like the Beast, and I just feel like Beauty and the Beast retellings for me are kind of a dime a dozen. Like, I really read so many of them, like, in high school, that it really has to be astounding for me, because I'm just kind of over that love interest of like stoic and like protecting you, but like just not telling you why, and like the villain isn't really the villain. Like, it's just not for me. So I think it was very well written, and I do want to continue and finish the series, like I said, but I don't think it'll be staying on my bookshelf. After that, I read Raiders of the Lost Heart, which is actually a book that I got for my friend for a book swap that we were doing, and then I just ended up reading it myself because she was reading a different book, so before she got to it, I was like, I'll just read this quick because I was interested in it. It's a jungle adventure romance, which I think is just something I've never read before, so I was really excited to check that out. It definitely reminded me of, like, just setting-wise of, like, a Lara Croft game, or like if you've seen the Sandra Bullock movie Lost City or something like that, kind of like a romance set against the adventure and backdrop of like a jungle. This is specifically about 2 archaeologists who are trying to find this dig site that has been like a mysterious kind of mythical unfound thing. So they're working together. They're enemies to lovers because they had a falling out in grad school, and I just think it's very bare bones. Like, it's not bad. The story itself is very interesting, and I feel like it definitely escalates at the end where you're like, oh my gosh, this feels like a video game. But I just feel like the characters themselves could have been a little bit more developed, especially like side characters. I feel like in terms of like villains or like best friend or like oh, this is the intern. Like, it was very one-dimensional of, like, kind of what you would see, I feel like, in a cookie cutter movie, which isn't bad. Like, it was a quick read, and I feel like the chemistry between the two main characters is really, really good. So that was fun to see, but I just kind of wish it had been more. And one part that made me kind of confused and stuff was just like, there was a big emphasis on like how the main character is a female in a male dominated industry with archaeology, and how like her looks are kind of what people base her on instead of like how smart she is. And I feel like that's a very important and timely subject that really could have been dealt well with, but I feel like it's hard in a romance book because you're juxtaposing the idea of her saying, like, I don't want to be judged for my body, like, I want people to, like, see more than that to me, with also, like, constant descriptions of, like, how she looks by the male love interest and how, like, she feels, like, the two ideas don't really work because I feel like it gives you this, like, cognitive dissonance where you're like, okay, I don't want to think about her body, but then, like, they just keep describing her body. I feel like it's a good idea, but it's just the execution of both of them is hard to pull off for anyone, and I just think it just wasn't pulled off well. But I liked it, and I think it's different enough that I would definitely read more by the author. After that, I read True Beauty Volume 1. So this I actually had found out, I don't know why, but like my YouTube algorithm, the shorts just randomly started giving me all these K-dramas, and it was both a blessing and a curse because I liked them, but then I had to pay to watch all of them, so I didn't actually end up watching any of them because I was like, I don't have money to pay for that, I'm sorry. But True Beauty was one of them. The funny thing is I actually got into it based on this one guy that was the love interest in the True Beauty like shorts that I had seen. Come to find out he is not the main love interest, so when I like read this book, I'm like, oh, this guy's so cool, so, like, and then I look up his name and I'm like, that is not the name of the one that you were like shipping in the shorts. So I think it's really fun. The whole idea is like this girl who kind of just sees herself as like not attractive, and she does all these beauty routines, kind of finds tutorials to make herself pretty, and the main story in the first one at least is how like she is this beauty bombshell at school, but she doesn't want anyone to ever see her without like her makeup or anything like that, and this new guy who was the love interest moves into school and recognizes her without her makeup, and it's just like this whole, it sounds so simple and cheesy like describing it, but it's really funny. She's got like this really cute relationship with her brother that I think is sweet. It just feels realistic and like very much like a problem that I think a lot of girls can relate to. Like, I definitely could relate to it, of just like being like, you put so much stock in that, but then also like no one can see me without my eyelashes, right? So I think it was just super cute. I don't think I'm gonna watch the show, and for some reason my YouTube algorithm has now like those never show up on my recommended anymore, so I don't really know what's gonna happen with that, but I do definitely want to continue with the graphic novels. I think they're really fun, and there's a lot more that I know has to get introduced, so I'm looking forward to that. After that, I read The Sea and You. This is like a Little Mermaid Ursula kind of retelling, which normally I roll my eyes at, I'm gonna be honest with you, because I feel like every single Ursula retelling is just her getting her heart broken or like betrayed by a man, and then in turn she's like, I'm gonna be mean to every single person now, and it's like, you're stronger than that, girl. Like, do not give him this power over you that you're gonna be mean to everyone else. So I was a little wary, but the cover is beautiful, and it's also two girls, so it's like, you know, it's really cute because it's like looking at mermaids as in like they're not these like lovable creatures. They're like very fearsome and will like, it's almost like more of like a siren, I guess, because it's like they will eat you. And that's how it starts, with like the main character almost getting drowned by the mermaid. This like friendship develops from there. It's really, really cute how they meet in secret and kind of develop their own language in a way, because the mermaid cannot speak. That's another rule about mermaids in that world. So the main character teaches her sign language, since her mom, I believe, is deaf and she knows sign language. So it's really sweet seeing her kind of come up with this language of teaching her to talk to her. And there is a bargain that is made to be on land, but I feel like the way it is dealt with is very interesting and different, and not just like a betrayal. It's a very sweet love story and a very strong love story. And there's also a very, I think, interesting and not something you usually see storyline about the main character being in an emotionally and sometimes physically abusive relationship with her boyfriend. I think it's a very great example of kind of emotional abuse, like I said, gaslighting, and how someone can like throw a scene and then make you feel like you're the problem. Like, I feel like it was very well done, and in a way where you're not like rolling your eyes and being like, how are you staying with this guy? Like, he clearly doesn't care about you. It felt very real and raw. It felt like someone who had really put the care into it of not judging this person, but being like, hey, this is the situation they're in, and we're not gonna say that that's bad or good. Like, we're not gonna force judgment on them. We're just gonna say that, like, this is how it happens, and it happens way easier than you would think. So I don't know if there will be a second one. It kind of ended on like a little bit of a cliffhanger, not in a way, but just like, oh, what's gonna happen next? I would love it, but everything I saw online didn't say any plans to make it, but I really hope we see more because I think it's really cute and sweet and emotional, and I just really liked it. After that, I have literally, I'm going to be honest with you, the worst book I've read probably in a while, but definitely this year. Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I literally picked this up. I've had this since like maybe last year. I remember buying it at Target when I was with my friend. I picked it up to read it, and I was like, why did I buy this? Literally all I could think of was that it was when I was back in my like To All the Boys I Loved Before phase. So I thinking that like the like secret admirer letter aspect of it like triggered that part of my like alien brain and was like, oh, maybe this will be good. But no, I've noticed this weird thing with Tessa Bailey books. Like there's another one coming out soon, or it might be out now, but it's like there's like a spoiler for the plot in the description. Like it'll be like, this is what the main plot is. Oh, and then this also happens. And you're like, wait, shouldn't that be something that I just like organically find out happens, not you tell me? This book was bad. I like opposites attract. These two people should not be together, okay? Like the guy is like an anxious type A, OCD because of a reason of something that happened to him. And you're like, okay, like you should probably like relax a little. It would be nice if you're not having panic attacks all the time, right? She, on the other hand, is just perpetually late, like owns a business, but is like 4 hours late to show up to landscape. And I'm like, that's just rude. Like, that's not like, oh, like that's a personality quirk. That's just unprofessional. Like, you can't expect me to believe she could run a business where she habitually shows up like when she's just like, I'll show up whenever I want to, you know? Like, that was just so hard. And I also feel like it wasn't meeting in the middle. It was him changing himself so much to fit with her and be like, I love all your quirks. Like, I have no problem with any of them. And him being like, I'm just gonna throw all my schedules away. My schedules like get me through the day and like literally stop me from having panic attacks. I don't need them now that I'm with you. And she has like no reciprocation on her end of being like, hey, maybe I'll try and like actually give you a window of time that I'll be here instead of just being like, I'll show up whenever. So I feel like it just, she wasn't a likable character, I feel like, at all. He was very weird. Like, I feel like I understood him more because of like the anxiety, OCD of like, oh, this is like why he's struggling with this. But at the same time, I feel like he just so easily was like, I'm okay now. That I'm like, it doesn't really work like that. There was also like this weird kind of subplot where like she is a virgin, which is like fine, whatever, but the way he would talk about it of being like, no one's touched her and I'll make sure that I'm the only one, and like very archaic, like outdated ideas of like ownership over someone was like not vibing well with me. So I think this is a call on me and Tessa Bailey's time together. Like, there's never been a book that wows me, and this in 2023 or whenever it came out being like just really outdated stereotypes, I think for me is a no-go. So I'm done. I'm done with her. After that, I read Charming, which is a book that I picked up a while ago. Again, theme of the day. But this one I was really looking forward to because it's basically John Tucker Must Die meets fairy tale. So it's Prince Charming swindling like Snow White, Rapunzel, and who's the last one? Snow White, Rapunzel, and Sleeping Beauty. That's it. So it's him swindling all of them and then them coming together and being like, wait, we've been swindled by the same guy, and getting revenge on him. I think what didn't work for me is I wasn't expecting the layout of this book, so I thought it would be like kind of like everything had already happened, they meet, they realize they've all been duped by the same dude, then the majority of the book is them getting their comeuppance on him, right? Like doing their plot. Instead, it's more like opens with like one of his schemes, then it cuts to them meeting at a wedding, the girls, the princesses, then it cuts to previously one of his schemes on someone else, back to the wedding, then the next girl tells her scheme, back to the wedding, then it cuts to Prince, like there's a lot more Prince Charming in this that I thought, and I don't think he's that interesting of a character to kind of devote so much of the time to him. Like, I definitely would have liked to see more of the princesses themselves. The end, I will say, had two really good twists that I did not see coming. I think this just would have worked better as a screenplay for a movie because you could totally see where it would be like, instead of reading like 50 pages of a flashback, it could be like a 15-minute, not even 10-minute maybe flashback, and it would just flow much more better. Much more better, yeah, definitely. Especially like the scene of them at the wedding and cutting to like, oh, this is what happened to me. Back to the wedding. Oh, this is what happened to me. Like, it just felt jarring, whereas I feel like in a movie or a TV show it would have flowed more freely. So I'm excited to see what else, and I do think it's really fun, and like the plot twist at the end alone is worth reading. Then the last book I read this year so far is Dark Fairy Tales of Fearless Woman. I'm actually surprised I bought this because I'm not usually like a short story girly. This is a collection of different fairy tales featuring women from different cultures around the world. I think I said different twice, but please forgive me. I liked it. I think the only thing is I wish it was actually longer. Like I feel like a lot of the stories seemed kind of like bare bones, or like most of them are like 1 or 2 pages. Sometimes they're a little more and could be like 4 or 5. I just think I would have liked more depth to them because it definitely felt like I think this would be the perfect gift for like a 13-year-old girl or something like that who's like just starting to get into like older fairy tales and stuff like that. I think this would be really good, and I would have ate this up in like 8th grade. But I just feel like I wanted more. I wanted something that delved a little deeper, just was a little more richer in like language and imagery and stuff like that, instead of just kind of like the basic of like, oh, this is what happened, this is what happened. But I do think the stories are very interesting in themselves, and I think it's cool to see that like the fairy tales are different types of women. You know, some of them are just like this thing happens to them and they're reacting to it. Some of them are literally the driving force in it themselves. Like it was very cool to see the different stories of different cultures, because like I said, I had not heard of a majority of them, I think. But I just think overall I would definitely read something like this again if there was like recommendations for something that kind of just went a little bit deeper, you know, and explained more and just kind of were longer stories. I think that would be great. So yeah, there you have it. Those are the books that I have read this year so far. Hopefully I can get through more on my shelf. As of now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them have been from my shelf, I believe, and then other ones have just been various, borrowed from the library, borrowed from my friends, stuff like that. I do feel like I've made a dent, but also like looking around I haven't made a dent, probably just because like the ones that I'm picking out I'm slotting with like books that were like on the floor or something like that. So hopefully by the end of the year there will be progress and just seeing like what I've gone through and what I've really been like, all right, we're keeping this, we're not keeping that. But yeah, I think I'm enjoying this a lot. I also got this journal. I found this at my bookstore, but it's just like a reading journal. My friend has one that she keeps online, but I just don't really like online stuff. It just hurts my eyes to look at. I like the like physical like writing stuff. So the only thing is it doesn't give you a lot of room to write stuff, but I really like it because you can put like plot notes, character notes, favorite quotes, and it's just been a really fun way to kind of keep track. I personally added like a little part myself of keeping track of like when I had it, like when I bought it, and if I'm keeping it or not after reading it, and I just think it's been really fun. So yeah, I'm excited to read more, and if you have any recommendations based on what you have read this year or what you're looking forward to reading this year, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys all so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!